You've seen them everywhere, right? The books with the bright covers promising to change your life, fix your habits, unlock your hidden potential. But here's the billion-dollar question. Does that journey through the self-help aisle actually lead to a better life? Or is it just a well-marketed detour? Well, let's dig in and find out. You know, this search for a better life is about as old as humanity itself. It goes way back to ancient philosophers who were trying to figure out what it means to live a good, flourishing life. It's this deep, fundamental human drive to understand ourselves and find a little more satisfaction. Fast forward to today, and that ancient quest has a very modern answer: the self-help industry. It gives us a flood of books, seminars, and courses, and they're all kind of presented as a map, right? A guide that promises to get us from where we are now to where we really want to be. And wow, do we invest in that promise? Just in the US alone, people spend almost $3 billion a year looking for answers in self-help. That number tells you just how much hope we're placing in finding the right map. So that brings us to the real heart of the matter. Does reading about change actually create change? In this explainer, we're going to unpack the evidence, weigh the promises against the real-world pitfalls, and figure out what really separates a helpful guide from a total dead end. Okay, first, let's just make sure we're on the same page. When we say self-help literature, we're talking about any book that's written specifically to teach you, the reader, how to tackle your own personal problems. Simple enough. And the destination these books are promising? It's this big idea of self-fulfillment. You know, that deep feeling that you're living a meaningful life, one that really lines up with your true potential and what you care about. All right, so let's start with the good stuff. Let's look at the best-case scenario. How can these books genuinely help us get closer to that feeling of self-fulfillment? Turns out, there are a few key ways. So at their best, these books can do 4 really important things. They can give us new ways to think about ourselves, which builds self-awareness. They can give us that jolt of motivation we all need sometimes. They can teach practical, concrete skills, like how to set a goal. And they can really encourage us to take ownership of our own lives. And this quote really sums up the core promise, doesn't it? The idea is that these books can literally help you rewire your thinking, become more optimistic, and give you actual, actionable things to do to improve your life. They're meant to be tools for transformation. But, and you knew there was a but coming, it's not always that simple. The road to self-improvement is littered with pitfalls, and we absolutely cannot ignore the dark side of the self-help shelf. And the criticisms are pretty serious. A lot of these books have zero scientific evidence to back up their big claims. They often boil down really complex personal issues into these simple, one-size-fits-all solutions. This can create totally unrealistic expectations for quick fixes, and believe it or not, sometimes they can actually do more harm than good. And check this out. This really drives that first point home. A study looked at 50 of the top-selling self-help books and found that less than half of them used techniques that were actually backed by scientific research. Even worse, only about a quarter of them gave you any way to measure your progress. This is where it gets really messy, because the scientific findings are all over the place. One study found that for people with low self-esteem, repeating positive affirmations, a classic self-help trick, actually made them feel worse. Another found a link between reading certain kinds of self-help and having more depressive symptoms. But then, other research found that for some people, the right book could be just as helpful as therapy. So, what gives? So, if the books themselves have such a mixed record, what's the one factor that decides whether they're going to help you or hurt you? Well, that brings us to the absolute core idea of this whole explainer. And this is it, right here. This is the whole ballgame. Knowledge alone rarely leads to transformation. The biggest problem isn't usually the book itself, it's the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. Just reading a book can give you this illusion that you're making progress, when in reality, nothing has changed. I mean, just look at the difference here. It's night and day. On one side, you've got passive consumption. You highlight stuff, you take some notes, and then you immediately go looking for the next book, the next quick fix. On the other side, you have active application. This is where you experiment with one idea, you focus on making one small change, you turn it into a habit, and you create real, actual change in your life. So what this all boils down to is this: the power is not in the book. It's in you. A self-help book is only as good as your willingness to close it, get off the couch, and actually apply what you've learned in the messy, complicated, real world. Okay, so that's great in theory, but how do we actually do that? How do we stop being passive readers and start being active doers? How do we turn the words on a page into real changes in our lives? Well, here's a simple but really powerful framework. First, be picky. Don't just grab the latest bestseller. Find a book from a credible source that actually speaks to what you're working on. Step 2, and this is crucial, apply only one idea at a time. Just one. Focus on it until it's second nature. Third, reflect. Write about it. Talk to a friend about it. Track your progress. And finally, remember a book is just one tool in the toolbox, not the entire thing. And that brings us right back to our map metaphor. The book can show you a possible route. It can point out some cool landmarks and maybe warn you about a few potholes. But the map is not the destination. You still have to do the walking. All right, so after looking at the good, the bad, and the critical importance of taking action, what's the real bottom line here? What should you walk away with? It really comes down to these three things. First, self-help books are tools. They are not magic wands, and they come with zero guarantees. Second, their value is determined almost 100% by you and your commitment to putting in the work. And third, if you approach them with a smart, critical, and intentional mindset, you can absolutely unlock their potential to help you grow. So in the end, the promise of self-help isn't found between the pages of a book. It's found in the choices you make after you put that book down. The map is in your hands. The only real question left is, where are you going to choose to go?